So before I call upon the New South Wales Attorney-General and Minister for Justice, Mr Greg Smith, SCMP, to perform the official opening for the conference, I'd like to say a few words, if I might. So this crime prevention conference has been developed by the AIC in partnership with the New South Wales Department of Attorney-General and Justice, as I've said. And in the past few decades, crime prevention has quickly gained a hold in policy and practice, offering an approach designed to prevent victimisation and crime, an approach that is widely recognised to be more humane, to be more socially and economically effective than responding to crime after the fact. Indeed, in many instances, preventative action may be the only viable option due to non-reporting, difficulties in gaining access to justice and other issues. It's a remarkable achievement that prevention is now recognised as a key pillar of policy for an effective criminal justice system, alongside law enforcement, courts and corrections, notwithstanding that its support in terms of funding, institutionalisation and professional development remains fairly modest. It's therefore pleasing that the Standing Council on Policy and Emergency Management has recently endorsed and will allow publication of a new national crime prevention framework just last week. And I'm pleased to say the framework was actually prepared by the AIC in partnership on behalf of the Australian and New Zealand Crime Prevention Senior Officers Group. What's even more remarkable, I guess, about crime prevention is that it has actually led the way in the development of cutting-edge methods and techniques for measuring policy and program effectiveness and growing the associated evidence base on what works to prevent and respond to crime. Importantly, a significant amount of this work has been generated here in Australia. The Australian Institute of Criminology, as the National Research and Knowledge Centre on Crime and Criminal Justice, has been an agency at the forefront of expanding evidence-based research in the past decade and the design and evaluation of crime prevention programs. Furthermore, a significant proportion of the practical application of crime prevention on the ground in towns, in cities around Australia, is being done actually in New South Wales, with a lead being taken by the Department of Attorney-General and Justice, as well as by police and other justice agencies. The work is often innovative and it's to be commended, as is the stellar work of the New South Wales Bureau of Crime Statistics and Research. But today I'd particularly like to recognise the Department's Crime Prevention Division for their hard work in partnering on this conference and all their input into the program development. Those of us directly involved in the development of crime prevention cannot help but be impressed and at times amazed by the growth in the sophistication and the utility of the technologies which allow us to map, track and analyse crime trends or prevention programs. These new tools allow us to make recommendations to government on better ways to protect the community and to intervene to protect the vulnerable or those at risk from becoming embroiled in the criminal world. New South Wales AGs and the AIC had felt that now was a good time to take stock of some of the current and emerging tools and techniques for crime prevention both nationally and internationally. It's pleasing that improving the knowledge and skills of the people working in crime prevention was also identified as a key area of focus in the new National Crime Prevention Framework. It's nice to have a meeting of the minds, and was possibly also biased given we actually wrote the framework document. In 2005, the AIC estimated the cost of crime in Australia was $35.8 billion, or 4.5% of GDP, representing a substantial economic loss. Yet it's difficult to attach a precise monetary figure for the lost productivity of those individuals committing the crime, as well as to their victims and the intangible costs such as fear of crime, pain, suffering and loss of quality of life. Thus, $35.8 billion is likely to be an underestimate. What we learn over the next 2 days should help Australian researchers, practitioners and policymakers apply better crime prevention techniques and technologies, and in the future mitigate some of those burgeoning costs to the community. I hope you enjoy the next 2 days and find the content stimulating and also thought-provoking. But it's now my pleasure to invite the New South Wales Attorney-General and Minister for Justice, Mr Greg Smith, SCMP, to formally open the conference. Mr Smith has a long history in the law, having worked in the Commonwealth Deputy Crown Solicitor's Office, as Senior Advisor to the National Crime Authority and as a New South Wales Crown Prosecutor. He was made Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions in 2002 and Senior Counsel in 2004. After being elected as a member for Epping in 2007, he was appointed Opposition Spokesman on legal issues. The attorney is committed to policies that will reduce reoffending and provide genuine rehabilitation for offenders, and enjoys a productive relationship with staff at the Department of Attorney-General and Justice with whom he works to achieve those ends and a lot more. It's my pleasure to welcome the attorney, Mr Greg Smith.
Well, Thanks very much, Adam. Ladies and gentlemen, it's lovely to be here today on such a beautiful Sydney day, and I'm sure our guests from North America will be very happy, but apparently they've brought the weather with them, so we can blame them. They didn't come up from Melbourne, which is the usual excuse. And I too pay my respects to the original owners of this land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, their elders past and present. Welcome to the conference, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. I just had a thought while I was listening to Adam that this morning I was on a couple of radio programs about an issue on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. That is a mother leaving a child in a car for 45 minutes and going off shopping. And there are all sorts of suggestions made in these programs, such as naming and shaming or bringing in jail sentences or whatever. And at the moment it's a fine of 200 penalty units, which works out, I think, at about $21,000 or something of that sort. But the woman got $400 because that's probably all she could afford, if that. And it just seems ridiculous just to have a financial penalty. But what do you do about it? Well, I thought with all here I'm wrecking the laptop already. I thought we have alarms, but when I don't have a seatbelt on in my car, I get a noise from the car, or when I'm backing too close to something, I get another noise. At least we could perhaps have some alarm triggered by a child remaining in a car seat or car restraint, or something to at least remind them, or perhaps make it loud, so that other people in the area might well say, hey, that's a child alarm. What are you doing leaving that child in the car? Just a thought. Economics is a key component of program development, implementation and evaluation. An assessment of the cost benefit of a particular program, the long-term benefit per invested dollar, has become a standard requirement of the New South Wales government and most governments across the developed world. Whether we're dealing with known offenders, crime prevention such as alcohol-related assault, or installing hardware like CCTV, all of which are topics that I gather will be covered by speakers over the next 2 days. The success of programs is not only assessed by a reduction in offending or crime prevention, but also whether there's a relationship between the investment in the program and the long-term saving in government expenditure and a benefit to the wider community. We know that programs working with known offenders in case management structured models can be very expensive initially, but we also know that if these projects are resourced properly, they have a long-lasting positive impact on the likelihood of people not reoffending. And I'm a supporter of the idea of putting the less serious offenders on under some sort of non-custodial penalty, under supervision and assistance finding jobs, training, homes, and a mentor if we can do that, because I think jails are largely a university of corrupt conduct. And but you know, obviously we have to lock the seriously dangerous and violent people up for a long time, sometimes forever, but many others would benefit much more from being outside under programs. And people with mental illnesses and drug problems don't really do that well in jail at all. There are enormous opportunities for crime prevention presented by new technologies and methodologies around spatial analysis. We have with us today the Crime Prevention Division and the Bureau of Crime Statistics from my department. Many of you will be very aware of their work, particularly the hotspot maps that are being used to understand the spatial distribution and concentration of different crimes across locations. And that's most useful from the perspective of operational program development and research. The opportunities for the prevention of crime are increasing as a direct result of spatial mapping data, and this represents an excellent example of 21st century crime prevention tools. Another key focus for my department is the increased collaboration with experts in government, the private sector and in the community sector. All government agencies have a direct and indirect role to play in crime prevention. Housing, health, transport and local government are working together every day, and examples of this collaboration are our work on the links between crime and public housing and crime and public transport. A number of partnerships and joint programs have been established between my department, New South Wales Police, Housing New South Wales and Transport New South Wales. We are collectively responding to crime challenges in a coordinated and strategic way. Collaborative partnerships between the government and the university sector are also key. My department established and continues to fund the Designing Out Crime Research Centre at the University of Technology, Sydney. The centre is a leading international institution and develops exciting design solutions to resolve and respond to problems relating to crime. I recently opened the new offices of the centre and was impressed by the products which had come from their research. One in particular I recall was a garbage tin that they can put on railway stations. And a lot of railway stations haven't been garbage tins for years because everyone's scared that someone put a bomb in there, apparently. So, you know, the railway stations have often been littered with people's papers and coffee cups and all that, unfortunately. But they've developed this type of garbage tin which is transparent. I think it's plastic, strong plastic. And there's a bag type situation there, sorry, I'm sure the technicians would be horrified by my description. But when you put something in there that has heat or some other substance some substance that might be detectable, I think there's a provision for alarms to go off or meters to show up or something of that sort, which seemed a very clever way of dealing with it. And it may not even let the person putting the bomb in there that they've been monitored, hopefully. The centre is currently working with manufacturers of ATMs to develop innovative solutions that will make the areas around ATMs safer to use and reduce the likelihood of fraud. I remember when I was stationed as a Crown prosecutor in a suburb in Sydney West, and it was the first time I saw an ATM where people went up and they sort of get around it like this to cover everything that's happening in case somebody sees them put in their pass number, their PIN number. And, you know, I thought, gee, it must be dangerous around here. And in recent times we've seen banks, sometimes you have to go inside the bank to use the ATM, and your card acts as a key to open the door, things like that. So the banks are making record profits and all that, fewer tellers and all that. They expect you to take the risk, in a sense, of exposing yourself to robbery or to fraud. And so it's good to find ways of avoiding that as much as possible. The centre represents, this is the UTS Centre, represents an excellent example of how government can work with leading research bodies to develop new and exciting answers to problems faced across the community. We're also significantly increasing collaboration with the private and community sector. Over the last few months, I've announced new forums and programs between government, the private sector and community sectors to respond to crime. And Brendan Thomas, the head of our crime prevention unit, who's here today, has been a great leader in that area with his team. We've established the Retail Strategic Partnership with the retail sector to consider coordinated responses to retail crime. This group is targeting their efforts in supermarkets, which we know experience high levels of crime. We've established a similar body with government and industry representatives to consider solutions to resolve residential break and enter. And I think recently I was at one where we're looking at crime on public transport too, and specialising in preventing that. We're engaged with and seek advice from the private sector industries like security, insurance, retail and development, and of course the police are always involved with us today. I see we have an officer here. Where are you? There you are, thank you. And so I recently attended the launch of an initiative between Rotary New South Wales and Dulux Paints, which supports volunteers to remove graffiti, which is a scourge in this nation, and I'm sure it's a scourge in other countries, not Singapore apparently. And we're helping to fund this initiative. In addition to substantial community benefits, the program also costs significantly less than other graffiti removal programs. And we're happy to say that Dulux has donated a lot of the paint remover in those Rotary programs, and they'll spread right throughout the state. As part of our focus on collaboration, we're delighted to partner with the Australian Institute of Criminology to bring you this conference by hosting law enforcement officers and crime prevention practitioners from across Australia, New Zealand and as far away as Korea. The Koreans here? Koreans? Annyeonghaseyo. Gamnahamsita. That's about all I know in Korean, I'm sorry about that. But, and it may not be well pronounced, but and in having experts representing international best practice here, we can gain greater insight into how we can continue to increase effectiveness in all our crime prevention practices. In planning this event, we aim to bring you the greatest expertise in crime prevention. I'm delighted to welcome two thought leaders in this field of our conference, Steve Ayos, Director of the Washington State Institute for Public Policy, and Professor Patricia Brantingham, Professor of Computational Criminology and Director of the Institute for Canadian Urban Research Studies from Simon Fraser University. I hope I got all that right. But in addition to our renowned keynote speakers, a range of experts will share their knowledge with us over the next 2 days on a broad range of issues, including economics, spatial mapping and collaborative partnerships. It gives me great pleasure to open this event. This is an opportunity to learn not only from our speakers, but also from each other over the coming days. Thank you very much and welcome.